Hello learners, you're watching video on Hermione Squad, a group of literary students initiative. Hope you have watched our previous sessions, or if you are new to this channel, please do like, share and subscribe. And today's session is on Jacobean drama. Let's move on to the session. Jacobean age. The age is named after James I, who reigned over England from 1603 to 1625. It was the period in English history that coincides with the reign of James IV of Scotland, who also inherited the crown of England in 1603 as James I. The word Jacobean is derived from Jacobus, the Latin version of James. The Jacobean era succeeds the Elizabethan era and precedes the Caroline era. After the glorious reign, the last Tudor monarch, Queen Elizabeth I, died in 1603, marking the end of a great dynasty. She was succeeded by James I, who established the Stuart dynasty in England. The reign of James I following the Elizabethan age is popularly known as the Jacobean age. It is the period of visual and literary arts. The term Jacobean is often used to denote the distinctive styles of architecture, visual arts, decorative arts, and literature which categorize that period. Some historians like to call the last 5 years of this age as a part of another age which they call the Puritan age. They call it so because between 1620 and 1660, Puritanism became the driving force in the life and literature of England. James Charles Stuart was the King of Scotland as James VI from 1567 and King of England and Ireland as James I from the union of the Scottish and England, crowns on 1603 until his death in 1625. James was ambitious to build on the personal union of the thrones of Scotland and England to establish a single country under one monarch, one parliament, and one law, a plan that met opposition in both realms. The Kingdom of Scotland and England were individual sovereign states with their own parliament, judiciaries, and laws, though both were ruled by James in personal union. James was the first ruler to unite England and Scotland, and he became the first Scottish King of England. James was the only son of Mary Stuart, Queen of Scotland, who was Henry VIII's niece and the arch enemy of Elizabeth I. He was also the great-great-grandson of Henry VII, King of England and Lord of Ireland, and thus a potential successor to all the three thrones. James succeeded to the Scottish throne at the age of 13 months. In 1603, he succeeded the last Tudor monarch of England, Elizabeth I, who died childless. He continued to reign in all three kingdoms for 22 long years, a period known after him as the Jacobean era, until his death. James' reign in Scotland was the longest of any Scottish monarch. James I was a Protestant brought up in the Scottish court, and in 1589 he married the Protestant Anne of Denmark. His visit to Denmark may have sparked an interest in witchcraft. James himself was a talented scholar and the author of works such as Demonology, which opposed witchcraft, and was a source for Shakespeare's Macbeth. James' sexuality was a matter of dispute. Throughout his life, James had close relationships with male courtiers, which has caused debate among historians about their exact nature. As said earlier, James I was a major advocate of a single parliament for England and Scotland. After the union of crowns, he himself assumed the title King of Great Britain. James I unquestionably believed in the theory of divine right, which was a fallacy very much in circulation among the crowned kings of Europe. This was the firm belief that kings were appointed by God Himself and that no one had the right to question the actions of the king except God. Though most kings believed in this principle, the intelligent monarchs never tried to force it into the minds of their subjects because they realized that no man could rule with the unstinted support of the ruled. The Tudors possessed this wisdom, and as a result, they were popular, so popular that many of their questionable actions were not questioned. The Stuarts, however, did not have this wisdom, and the lack of it drove a wedge between the king and that representative body of the people, the Parliament. James loved affirmation of the divine rights of kings, which by implication questioned the hard-won rights of the Parliament, made him instantly unpopular. James had a very high opinion of himself, which too did not go down well with his subjects. In spite of his self-importance, James was basically a good man. He achieved most of his aims in Scotland but faced great difficulties in England, including the Gunpowder Plot in 1605 and repeated conflicts with the English Parliament. King James I was sincerely devoted to peace, not just for his three kingdoms, but for Europe as a whole. Europe was deeply polarized and on the verge of the massive 30 Years' War. On assuming the throne, James devoted his efforts to bring the long Anglo-Spanish War to an end, and a peace treaty was signed between the two countries. He also tried to avoid involvement in religious wars, especially the 30 Years' War that devastated much of Central Europe. These were the most significant and most positive aspects of his reign. King James disliked Puritans and Jesuits alike because of their eagerness for warfare. After his accession in 1603, James I conducted the Hampton Court Conference in 1604 with a plan for a new Bible. The work on the Bible began in 1607 and published in 1611. What was produced was not a new version, but a version which respected earlier versions, especially that of Tyndale. It was actually a translation of the Bible into English that would later be named after him, the Authorized King James Version, which has been called the Miracle of English Prose. Sir Anthony Weldon, a 17th century courtier and politician, claimed that James had been termed as the wisest fool in Christendom, an epithet associated with his character ever since. James I was succeeded by Charles I after his death in 1625. James was widely mourned for all his flaws. He had largely retained the affection of his people who had enjoyed uninterrupted peace and comparatively low taxation during the Jacobean era. The gunpowder plot of 1605, in earlier centuries often called as the gunpowder treason plot or the Jesuits' treason, was one of a series of unsuccessful assassination attempts against James I and followed the main plot and byplot of 1603. The plot was organized by Robert Catesby along with a group of English Catholics in an effort to end the persecution of Roman Catholics by the English government. Catesby and others hoped to replace the country's Protestant government with Catholic leadership. The plan was to blow up the House of Lords on 5th November 1605. Around midnight on November 4th, one of the conspirators, Guy Fawkes, was discovered in the cellar of the Parliament building with barrels of gunpowder. Fawkes and other men involved in the plot were tried and executed for treason. Guy Fawkes' Night, also referred to as Guy Fawkes' Day and Bonfire Night, now is celebrated annually across Great Britain on November 5th in remembrance of the gunpowder plot by burning effigies of Fawkes. Characteristics of Jacobean period. The unification of England and Scotland under one ruler was an important order for both nations and have shaped their existence to the present day. Another important feature of this period was the establishment of British colonies in North America and West Indies, which laid the foundation for future British settlement and the eventual formation of both Canada and the United States of America. Religious conflict that subsided in the Elizabethan age revived in this period, and the Renaissance influence continued. The Jacobean style of architecture is the second phase of Renaissance architecture in England, following the Elizabethan style. It was a continuation of the Elizabethan style with increasing emphasis on classical elements, whereas the fine arts were dominated by foreign talent in the Jacobean era. Political events and developments of the Jacobean era cannot be understood separately from the economic and financial situations. The kingdom to which James I succeeded had serious economic problems, and the cost of war in Ireland had become a heavy burden for the government. Thus, Jacobean era ended with a severe economic depression complicated by a serious outbreak of bubonic plague in London in 1625. During the Jacobean period, literature was given a lot of importance and it was its peak. Though the Jacobean period kept up the high literary tradition of its immediate predecessor, as many themes and patterns were carried over from the preceding Elizabethan era, Jacobeans departed from the Elizabethan sense of moral order through depictions of corruption and violence that do not suggest divine retribution and the ultimate triumph of good. Still, Jacobean era produced rich prose and drama, as well as it also presented a galaxy of great poets. The most influential prose achievement of the era was the authorized King James Bible, which appeared in 1611 as its language became the benchmark of English language. Though rich, Jacobean literature was often dark in mood, questioning the stability of the social order. One of the most important literary features of Jacobean era is said to be the emergence of decadence of art. The term decadence usually describes a period of art or literature in comparison with the excellence of a former age. The spirit of Elizabethan age declines in the Jacobean age, that the Platonic idealism which had been the main spirit of the Elizabethan era almost died out. But the Renaissance spirit still remains the main influence upon Jacobean literature. And drama, which was the major literary genre in Elizabethan era, continues to dominate the literary scene in this age too. In Jacobean age, poetry took a new and startling turn. The elegance and felicity of Elizabethan verse disappeared. The Jacobean poetry included the graceful verses of Johnson and the Kabbaliya poets, but also the intellectual complexity of the metaphysical poetry of John Donne and others. English language developed further in the Jacobean era, and the emergence of new literary forms such as satiric arts are also regarded as the most important literary feature of Jacobean age. Jacobean drama. Drama was the most dominant literary genre and the main mode of expression in the Jacobean period. In the early Jacobean period, Elizabethans like Shakespeare and Ben Jonson were at their creative height. The Jacobean drama was increasingly dark and ambiguous, reflecting an era of social and philosophical transition. The plays reflected the metropolitan life, nature of political authority, and the intellectual doubt of the period. The dramatists of the age deviate from the tendency of the Elizabethan spirit. Thus, dramas turned from tragic atmosphere to the melodramatic spirit. The dramatists practiced the classical rules of drama, and they often dealt with issues which affected society. The Jacobean drama shows the spirit of decadence, and they were categorized with improbable plots, poor characterization, and taste for spectacle and artificiality. Genres in this period reflect a spiritual discord and materialism. Revenge tragedy is a kind of tragedy modeled on the Senecan tragedy. It is a tragic play in which the tragedy results from the revenge, which was popularized in the Jacobean age and flourished in Caroline period also. City comedy, also called citizen comedies, are satirical comedies based on London life. Tragic comedy emerged as a reaction to the excess of Jacobean tragedy. Masks. The development of extravagant courtly entertainment known as the masque is an important feature of Jacobean drama. Anti-masques introduced by Ben Jonson were comical and disruptive, performed by professional actors. The declination in the development of drama is also marked in the Jacobean period in the history of English literature. There are many significant reasons for the decline of drama in the Jacobean age. End of patronage. Only members of the royal family were allowed to patronize playwrights, and drama was brought under the direct subordination of the court, and also the playwrights were forced to be royalists. These changes were a major reason for the decline of the genre drama. Along with that, the lack of dramatic techniques in the Jacobean drama and the oppositions by Puritans also caused the weakening of drama. And in the later Jacobean period, popularity of theatres was lost, which also served for the decline of Jacobean drama. This is all about Jacobean age. Our next video will be on Caroline period. Thank you all and stay tuned.